All right, let's get serious and talk about the RX 480, guys. This everyone's going crazy. Now, this is a very well-priced card, like $200 or $300 depending on the one you go with. And AMD has realized some interesting things thanks to the stats that are out there in the market. So 95% of the gamers, according to Steam, game at 1080p or below. That's kind of interesting. I think most of our audience is like probably at 1440p or 4K, but hey, gaming, you know, in the grander scheme of things, PC gamers, 95% of them under 1080p, and 84% of them spend $100 to $300 on a graphics card. So they wanted to enter the market with their new 14 nanometer Polaris cards right in that sweet spot, which is kind of strange because, you know, a lot of times you like to have the big card. Even if it doesn't sell as many units, you want the big Jesus card, because then everyone like looks at your company. They're trying to fit right in there, and they're also, you know, I don't have a VR headset with me. I don't have one around, but they've talked a lot about their VR technology that's implemented into this to help smoother, you know, VR performance, liquid VR, and that sort of thing. They're working together with Oculus on that and some other technologies. But one thing that is important, they're asynchronous compute. It's hardware, whereas with NVIDIA, you still have some software doing that behind the scenes. So we're talking like true asynchronous compute here, and that can really help when it comes to that sort of thing. Let's look at all the ports on this. We have a 3 DisplayPort and one HDMI on this. On the top, we have one 6-pin power connector. That's all it takes. TDP is only on 150. We have a large plastic shroud covering the PCB with a blower fan on there, and that's going to just move everything out the back, keep it decently cold. Flip it over to the back, you can see that the heatsink is quite a bit bigger than the PCB and the GPU. So it's a pretty small PCB. I'm sure there's going to be some nice small implementations of this right out of the box. Maybe even some implementations of this for a laptop. Full-size 480 in a laptop, that would be very, very cool. I do want to mention that the shroud on this did feel kind of cheap and plasticky. It feels like an item that should be half the price of a premium item. That's just how it feels in your hands. Once you get it in your system, you're not feeling it anymore. It runs just fine. Oh yeah, one other thing to note. I didn't really notice much Coil Wine. I'm wondering if they glued the hell out of the capacitors and the samples they sent to reviewers. I'm messing around there, but still, I didn't hear much Coil Wine. So interesting for an AMD card that, you know, these usually have a lot of Coil Wine. First off, 36 compute units, 2,304 stream processors, and the boost clock's 1266 out of the box, and the core clock is 1120 out of the box. Peak performance up to 5.8 teraflops, and it comes in two different memory sizes, 4 gigabytes and 8 gigabytes of GDDR5. It's not the HBM. Maybe we'll see that on the next Fury. Who knows what's coming after this? I don't even know. Memory bandwidth is 224 gigabytes per second, or higher, they say. It's a 256-bit card. Total TDP is around 150 watts. This is FreeSync, Vulkan, DirectX 12. And they say VR Premium, which I'm not even sure what that means. So all the units shipping from AMD, and the one that they're going to be making the bulk of is they're going to have the 8 gigabytes, but the reference spec is 4 gigabytes. So you may see some partner cards out there from different companies at different price points with only 4 gigabytes of memory. And if you're only gaming at 1080p, that's going to be fine. Once you start doing VR where you have two different eyes, 8 gigabytes is going to come in handy. Once you start doing 1440p and 4K with big textures and modern games and lots of effects, 4K is going to be, 8 gigabytes is going to be really handy for 4K and that sort of thing. Now let's talk about the noise level. With this reference unit, we were seeing it with the fans about 50%. We were seeing about 40 to 42 decibels as far as noise goes. So not too bad there. And I mentioned the 50% fans is because when we were doing Valley, they never got higher than 50%. I just usually leave it on auto and then see what it does. I haven't really played with Radeon Crimson much until now, and I really want it on my main machine. I may have to upgrade to a couple of these on my main machine just because it's really nice. Very easy to use. It automatically knew all my games, knew where they were. It just has very, very good controls for all your games and that sort of thing. The other thing that's nice about it is they've created a new thing to sort of replace overdrive, and it's called What Man? Or is it What Man? What Man? Anyway, What Man? But that gives you total control over just about everything, your voltages, your temperatures, your whatever. But you can't really, it'd be cool if you could move your temperature up and down, or at least down, but no, fan speeds and all that sort of thing. And it gives you all kinds of different charts and graphs that you can follow. So we could probably make a totally separate overclocking tutorial once I get back from France, but not just yet. As far as all the technologies go, they are putting a lot into Vulkan, which thank you very much for that, guys. They're looking a lot at DirectX 12. You know, they've also mentioned that they are going to be supporting Linux in this. They put it in their marketing stuff they sent over to me, and they mentioned Linux a few times, and I was like, thanks. The drivers, they only send me drivers for Windows right now, so that's all I can do the tests with. I couldn't get it to work on OpenSUSE, even with you don't want to test with open source drivers, but I'm waiting for them to give me some drivers for Linux, then we can come back and revisit it and do a few tests. But yeah, it's right in this machine right here behind me that's running Windows 10, but I've also got, OpenSUSE on there. Are you guys ready to talk about the benchmarks? I mean, right now you can already look at the price. I'll tell you, any game 1080p max out, have fun. Any game 1440p max out, probably. Remove a couple filters, yes. 4K, this is the 4K no filter card. Every game that I tried out looks really good at 4K and plays really well without any filters. So just turn off your filters, and at 4K the pixel density is such that you probably don't even need a lot of the multi-sample stuff, the MSAA and all that sort of thing. All right, jumping into the benchmarks. First off at Doom, and we did all the benchmarks at 4K, 1440p and 1080p on an Intel 6700K based system. So there we go. So Doom at 4K, 32.84 FPS, never went lower than 28, but that was with all the filters turned on. Turn them off and you get a huge jump, and it's easy to play at 4K. 1440p, everything maxed out again, 66.84, really nice. And 1080p, you can see there, 100.6, pretty playable all the way across the board in Doom. Soma, I like to play indie games because they usually don't favor, NVIDIA or the Radeon stuff. Playable all the way across the board, 4K, 1440p, and 1080p, all very playable with the filters on. Turn the filters off again at 4K, and you're gaming and happy. Witcher 3, that's the one that struggled the most at 4K. It was only 19.64, but that was up with all the filters on. So you turn off the filters, again, you're over 30 FPS. 1440p, 32.72, but it never dropped below 31. 1080p, 42, not bad. And now we've got the 3D Mark Firestrike Ultra benchmarks, and you can see the results here on the screen at 4K. Pretty rough around the edges, but 1440p and 1080p looked, okay. Not too good, not too bad, but this is price to performance when we're looking at this card. It's not the Hulk card like the 1080 or whatever. Next up, Valley, 4K, not so hot, but 1440p and 1080p, both doing just fine. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. Now this one I actually did test out without the filters, just to let you see how it is. Because with the filters is 26.68 at 4K. Turn off the filters, and all of a sudden we're getting 44.78 with a minimum of 39. So even the frame times are pretty good there. 1440p, 36.92, and 1080p, you can see 44.56 on the screen. Now, I will make all of the Fraps results available to you guys. If you want to go in and look at all the frame times and all that sort of thing, you guys can do that. I'll throw them on the website in a link. It's a zip file. Go ahead, have fun, look through all the data, get nerdier than I am. For me, this card is not about being that nerdy. It's about being extremely valuable for 1080p. Pretty valuable for VR gaming, and really good at 4K without filters. So this card is very, very easy to recommend. It beats the 970 in most tests. The 970 edged it out a couple of times in a couple of different games, but for the price, really, I'm going to have a hard time not recommending anything other than the RX 480. I really need to try this with VR, and I really need to try two of these. I said, AMD, can you send me another one of these things? And they were like, no. We didn't even send Jay two of these. How are we going to do this? It would be really cool to get my hands on two of these and just see if it can best the 1080, because two of these is cheaper than a 1080. But then we may run into the whole thing. We're like, does this game support Crossfire, or what's going on with that? When DirectX 12 comes out, it might be a different story, since then it just becomes one big pool of rendering resources. We'll have to see how that works as well with all the transfers going through the bus, but it should just be a pool of awesomeness is what it should be. And I think Vulkan can do some stuff like that as well. So the future's looking pretty good. And if this is their, entry into the 14 nanometer FinFET stuff, I wonder what's going to come next. So do I recommend the 480? Yes, I do, especially at this price point. I would watch the NVIDIA stuff right now, though, because, you got 980 Ti's coming down in price. 980 is going to come down in price. Those two are still pretty beastly. But really, for the power and the performance, getting a couple of these, Even if a 970 comes down to the same price, I'd still rather have the RX 480. It's just a really good card at a really good price. And I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with this. You know what I'd like? Since it's so small and the PCB so small, maybe 2 of these on one PCB would be freaking amazing. Think about it. You could have one GPU for each eye for your different cores. That'd be kind of cool. And I can't wait to see what they're going to do with the Fury. I can't imagine that this is going to be the end of the Polaris line. This is just the first one in there. So, guys, click on Patreon. Get a T-shirt. They're freaking cool. If you don't, then you're bad. There, took care of you, didn't I? Anyway, subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to our website. Subscribe to my friends. I'm not very good at this ending thing. Just go comment on the website. Let us know what you think. Let AMD know what you think of their card. And we'll see you guys in the comments.